moving back to where was your mind that led you to disappear? To did you guys go to Vegas first and then to Tennessee?
No, I kind of refer to it as like the road trip from hell.
It's a very Hunter S. Thompson way to describe it. It's
Right.
back. You went back to back country.
Maybe it was sort of Hunter S. Thompson-esque, except without actual drugs.
Mm.
That was one of the first questions my father asked me was it drugs? And I wished that I could have said yes, because I didn't know how to explain what had happened. But
so road
he
trip
took
from
me
home.
away involuntarily, except, of course, he wasn't holding a gun to my head, but all along it was like a metaphorical gun.
Was there ever physical abuse?
No. What would qualify as sexual abuse? Yes. But physically, no. A couple of times we would get into slightly physical fights, but he never, he was big and as large and blubbery as he was. He was also really strong.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes he would like subdue me, but other than that, no, there wasn't physical violence. But a lot of people will say that the psychological violence is, I don't want to diminish physical violence, but some people say that the psychological and emotional violence is more destructive.
It's just that the physical violence is easier to identify.
It's easier to identify, and it seems kind of more straightforward.
Yeah.
Whereas psychological, and you have a bruise on your face or you break a bone, and those things hopefully heal in a visible way. But psychological stuff, you can't easily identify or understand, or others can't easily identify it.
And then you find yourself crying for no reason at a beautiful song at some point.
Yes.
And it's that has to do something happening in the depth of your mind. Okay, so he took you away. But where was your mind that was doing both of those things? Was able to be taken away, but also was pushing to this the flourishing, the reopening and the flourishing of the restaurant?
Well, I wouldn't have reopened the restaurant and then knowing I was going to all of a sudden be taken away from it and it was going to get closed again. It's like, why would I do that? Why would anybody do that? And one of the things that I tried to do towards the end was I was trying to get myself off the bank accounts because I didn't want him to be able to get money out of me. And so there was one time when I tried to get one of the investors, we went to the bank together to put her on as the signer and take me off. And because we didn't have the operating agreement, they wouldn't let us do it. So it was like this little snafu. And so all of these things are sort of the opposite of criminal intent.
But that's a legal thing. What's going on in your mind at this time?
I don't know. I mean,
did you give yourself a chance to just think?
No. And I think that's part of one of the things that might have saved me or anybody that's pulled into a cult. One of the things that they do is they keep you exhausted, overwhelmed, confused, and afraid. And so you don't have any time to think. So you're just kind of constantly running and you're confused and then things are happening. It's funny. I have some quotes in my book draft because I listen to a lot of podcasts. I don't know what the logistics are of like crediting a quote from a podcast in a book.
Yeah.
But I have a couple. I think it was Andrew Huberman on Joe Rogan said something about if a human or animal, I don't know how he would know, if a human or animal is stressed, and I'm paraphrasing this horribly, but
yeah.
they're much more easily prone to be not prone to, but forced into delusional thinking. And so that quote resonated for me because, he kept me in this incredibly stressed out, afraid, confused state. And then whatever he's sort of planting in my mind, I'm going to be that much more likely to just kind of go along with it.
Well, we'll see how this whole journey ends. Let's actually just step back a little bit and just looking at the employees of the restaurant and so on. Do you have remorse for what happened, especially from the perspective of the employees and the staff?
Yeah. Hurting them was sort of the last thing that I would ever have wanted to do. And in part. I mean, there was financial harm, but I don't know whether it's more important or not. But it was taking a place that was very much like a family to them, and it was as if I destroyed it. And so I think that because we were so much like a family, it was almost as if like mom went off the deep end and got together with some cuckoo abusive guy and sort of abandoned them, and they didn't know what was going on and what was happening. And
So do you regret lying to them?
I regret lying to anybody in all of those circumstances, but I wasn't lying. He made me think that, everything was going to be reversed and okay. And anybody that money was borrowed from, they would get it back, maybe tenfold. And so it was this weird situation of having like one foot in his reality and potentially believing the things he was saying, or even over time wanting to believe them more and more because the alternative was the alternative was worse. The alternative was increasingly a bigger and bigger nightmare. So
there's this whole situation where you're constantly giving him money, you're constantly borrowing money with this idea that it'll be repaid like 100x fold.
right.
Kind of like, yeah.
So it's sort of like lying to somebody because you're planning their surprise party. You think like, well, I'm lying to somebody, but it's because there's a good reason.
Yeah.
It's sort of, that's not a good example, but
No, but you could have not made it a surprise party and be like, pull him in onto the planning of the party and be honest about like everything that's happening, not in a negative way, but like get him in on the fact that, okay, I just need to give money to this guy, but he is a super rich person of some kind and he'll repay.
I mean,
Because you're holding on to this
time. I mean, that's part of the torture is that you're isolated and unable to tell anybody.
But you're not unable, or he was telling you you're not allowed to say anything to anybody. I mean, you're choosing not to say anything, but it's because of the sort of the weight of it. Because it's embarrassing to sort of, is it embarrassing? It's something. I mean, why do you not tell others? What is that? What's happening to the mind where you don't tell others?
I don't know. You're part of why the story is, everything that happened is hard to summarize and talk about in any concise way, is that so much of it happens in this very slow
Step by step
way. And, people always use the whole like frog in boiling water example. So that by the time you realize you're fucked, it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems hard to believe or understand to other people because they see where you are or where you ended up. And they think, well, how did you let that happen? And, well, I don't know. Would I have willingly destroyed my life and hurt all the people I care about and, allowed my mother to get hurt? And I wouldn't have ever willingly done that. So something else must have happened. And that's the part that's difficult to understand.